Chapter 221. Baikan Peaks Mu Heng. When the news spread, the drill grounds broke out into chaos. Everyone already knew that this black rock was not ordinary. It was multiple times harder than ordinary rocks. It was not a simple task at all. Everyone was already feeling nervous, and they found it incredulous when they heard that martial techniques were not allowed. It was not only the inner disciples that felt it was incredulous, even the two deputy examiners beside the chief examiner had expressions of shock on their face. They were very clear about the origins of the black rock. Even if they wanted to split the rock in half, they would have to use a quarter of their strength. The chief examiner had an unsightly expression as he said in a deep voice, "Silence. We will continue the examination. If you keep making noises, I will use my own methods to ensure silence." Although there were still people who were dissatisfied, no one dared to voice their dissent under the might of the chief examiner. The examinee with the number 2 walked out with a grave expression. This person was slightly smarter. After he walked around the black rock, he asked the chief examiner, "Can I touch this rock?" The chief examiner nodded. "You can, but you cannot use your essence to cheat. Furthermore, you can't take too long." This person quickly touched the surface of the rock. He was clearly very cautious. After a while, he withdrew his hand and slowly drew his saber. Dang! He made his move decisively in one breath with no hesitation at all. With a shua sound, the blade broke apart the top of the rock and sliced downward with a zzz sound. This person revealed an expression of joy as he increased the amount of force. Ka. Just as the blade was only a quarter away from reaching the bottom, it got stuck. No matter how much force this person used, the blade refused to keep going down. It was now thoroughly stuck. Bang! The chief examiner sent out a palm strike through the air again. There was a sonic boom and the human-sized rock shattered into fragments. When the person's saber loosened, he did not expect it and he tumbled back for a few steps before he stabilized himself. Number 2. Fail. Number 3. Carry on. The chief examiner spoke unhurriedly despite that person's dissatisfied expression. He was indeed quite unfortunate. He was just a little off from splitting the black rock in half. Even so, a little off, still too short, he did not succeed in the end. Xiao Chen looked at the number 2 examinee leaving dejectedly. His expression turned serious as well. Why is this exam so strict? That person was a superior grade martial grand master. If one was unable to use martial techniques, then most of the people here were likely to obtain similar results. They would be eliminated in the first stage. Xiao Chen cast his gaze on the high platform. There was an old man that sat in the middle. He seemed senile, but his aura was surging. From such a distance, he could feel the strong and drawn-out aura of life. This person was the first elder of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion Elders Assembly, Zhang Lai. He was the person with the highest position in the entire Heavenly Saber Pavilion. The dart from earlier was thrown out by him. Xiao Chen's gaze was filled with doubts. What is this old man thinking? The first stage is already so difficult. Is he trying to eliminate everyone? What is the first elder thinking? Why did he increase the difficulty by so much? The Wanren Peak's peak master felt suspicious as he spoke on the other side of the high platform. At this rate, whether we can even select 10 core disciples will be a problem. What exactly happened? Senior Brother Leng, your relationship with the First Elder is the best. Do you have any inside news? This core disciple exam was indeed rather strange. Even the peak masters did not know beforehand that such a change would occur. Leng Tianzheng frowned at the First Elder Zhang Kai on the high platform and gave him a glance. He muttered to himself in a low voice, could it be because of that? Seems like I have to make some advanced preparations after the exam ends. When the Jade Maiden Peak's peak master, Chu Shangyan saw Leng Tianzheng muttering to himself. She said, "Senior brother Leng, do you really have some inside news? Do share it with us." Leng Tianzheng smiled embarrassedly and shook his head. "Don't overthink this. What kind of inside information could I possibly have? Just keep watching." Everyone clearly did not believe him, but since Leng Tianzheng was not willing to speak, they could not force the issue. Everyone here had the same status, they could definitely not force each other to do anything. Lu Ruyu's pretty face was also filled with suspicions. She was not sure what had happened. She looked into the distance and watched Xiao Chen, who was on the drill grounds. She muttered to herself, "Hopefully nothing will happen." The scorching sun was high in the sky. Occasionally, there would be hammering sounds coming from the drill grounds. The first stage had been going on for a period of time already. However, the number of people who had passed so far were just 10. Furthermore, these 10 people were all peak superior grade martial grand masters. Their foundations were very solid and they were able to cleave the black rock in half with one breath. Number 100, Tianyu Peak, Zhang Lai. The chief examiner read out in a loud voice. "It's Zhang Lai. Zhang Lai is going to come out. I have heard of his name for quite a while now. He has been progressing very fast in Tianyu Peak. I heard he is the son of the clan head of the Zhang clan. That clan is Yunyang City's top clan. He has a good background and high talent. All he has to do is to put in effort and he would definitely become strong. He is already strong. Tianyu Peak organizes a competition every month. The ordinary inner disciples in Tianyu Peak are already no longer a match for him. He is able to obtain the title of number 1 amongst the inner disciples of the strongest peak in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. It is almost certain that he would obtain the first position in this exam." Haha, it's a little early to speak such words. Wait until he clears the first stage first. If he cannot clear this stage, he would not even be able to obtain the status of a core disciple. The moment Zhang Lai stepped out, he immediately attracted everyone's attention. The ordinary inner disciples on the spectator stands all started chatting amongst themselves. In the distant spectator stands, there was a group of Heavenly Saber Pavilion disciples with 3 gold lines on their collars. They also paid attention to the drill rounds. These core disciples were the core disciples who were ranked in the last 50. After Zhang Lai and the rest cleared the first 2 stages, they would have to choose an opponent from them and fight. Their status as core disciples was on the line. Zhang Lai. I hope I do not get him as my opponent. A Baikan Peak's core disciple said with a face full of worry as he looked at Zhang Lai. Another core disciple chimed in as well. It would be great if he failed at the foundational stage. That way, all of us would not have to worry. The faces of the 50 core disciples were more or less filled with worry. After all, they had enjoyed the privileged treatment as a core disciple. If they were to drop back to being an ordinary inner disciple, they would find it difficult to accept the difference in treatment. There was only one person with a calm expression. His eyes were closed as his hands held a saber, hugging it in his embrace. He completely ignored the sounds of his surroundings. It was as though it had nothing to do with him. He was incomparably tranquil and calm. Zhang Lai slowly walked to a black rock. His aura was completely withdrawn, completely contained without any released. His gaze was very calm. After a while, his aura suddenly became sharp. A gleam appeared in his eyes. It was as though a sharp saber was drawn out of its scabbard, revealing its sharp edge. Ka-ca. The black rock in front of Zhang Lai suddenly exploded apart and turned into countless fragments that flew through the air. Zhang Lai waved his hand, casually sending out a wind from his palm. An intense wind blew in front of him. The fragments flying at him immediately fell to the ground. What's going on? How did the rock shatter? The other participants in the core disciple exam were all incredibly astonished. They did not see Zhang Lai make a move. Xiao Chen's eyes were filled with shock as well. What's going on? He was very sure that Zhang Lai did not draw his saber at all. However, the resilient rock had shattered. Saber intent. Suddenly, these two words appeared in Xiao Chen's mind. This was definitely one of the states of the saber. Furthermore, Zhang Lai had comprehended his saber intent to small perfection. Congratulations, senior brother Leng. You accepted another outstanding disciple. He is able to comprehend his own saber intent at such a young age. His future is unlimited. Tianyu Peak is full of talents. How enviable. Small perfection saber intent. The Heavenly Saber Pavilion has not had a genius like this for the past few hundred years. A gentle smile appeared on Leng Tianzheng's face as he replied to the other peak masters. However, he was bewildered. He knew about Zhang Lai comprehending saber intent. However, Leng Tianzheng originally thought he would keep it as a trump card. He did not expect him to use it at the very start. Why? Given Zhang Li's character, he should not be this brash. Back on the drill grounds, Zhang Lai suddenly turned his head around. There was a bright gleam in his eyes. He had finally found the sharp gaze from earlier. An ordinary squarish face was imprinted into his eyes. Mu Heng slowly revealed a stunned expression. After a while, he smiled at Zhang Lai before withdrawing his gaze, turning back into an unremarkable passerby. Zhang Lai burned Mu Heng's image into his mind as he thought to himself. I finally found you. I did not reveal my trump card in vain. The pressure you applied on me, I can apply on you as well. It was not difficult for Zhang Lai to split the black resilient rack in half without the use of such a martial technique. However, before he went forward, he thought of that incredibly sharp gaze. Although he told himself that he had to forget this gaze, that there was nothing remarkable about this gaze in order to console himself, this gaze had already had a mark in his heart. If he did not resolve this perfectly, there would be a chance that his heart demon might emerge and spoil things when he was fighting. Thus, Zhang Lai chose to expose his trump card. He had predicted Mu Heng would unintentionally reveal his gaze. The development of the situation was as Zhang Lai had expected. Number 100, Zhang Lai, pass. Next. The exam continued to proceed and the number of people who failed increased. The number of people who failed at the first stage in his exam far surpassed that of any previous exams. Everyone was surprised at these turn of events. By the time they called out number 200, the number of people who could successfully split the rock only numbered 60. The rate of elimination was very high, leaving people dumbfounded. Number 220, Baikan Peak, Mu Heng. The chief examiner continued to read out. Mu Heng parted the crowd and slowly walked to the front. He was like an unremarkable blade of grass, no one paid any attention to him initially. Only when he walked to the front, did everyone's gaze focus on him. The crowd soon sensed Mu Heng's cultivation realm. What's going on? This person is only an inferior grade martial grand master, someone exclaimed. The most basic requirement of taking part in the core disciple exam was to be a superior grade martial grand master by the age of 19. This barrier had already stopped numerous inner disciples. When they saw that Mu Heng was only an inferior grade martial grand master, they started to question this one after another. The chief examiner was expressionless as he looked at the restless crowd. Despite the blazing sun, they instantly felt a chill down their backs when they met this gaze. It was a chill that penetrated their bones and froze their hearts. If you have any questions, please go ask the Elders Assembly to explain it to you after the exam. For now, anyone who makes any noise can scram immediately. Mu Heng's ordinary face did not change at all because of the words of the others. He simply walked forward to a rack and took a deep breath. Shoo! He raised his right hand and used his palm as a saber. He tilted his body slightly and hacked down. The air parted like water, sliced apart by Mu Heng's palm. The black rock was slowly cut in half with a shua sound. Mu Heng's movements were very slow. It was in sharp contrast to Zhang Lai's ferocious saber intent. Everyone could see it very clearly, their eyes wide open and their mouths agape. When a superior grade martial grand master used a saber blade and struck it with all his strength, it was still difficult for them to split the mysterious black rock. To think that an inferior grade martial grand master sliced it apart easily, it was out of everyone's expectations. The crowd that initially objected to Mu Heng's participation were now thoroughly speechless. Only shock was left in their hearts. Mu Heng withdrew his hand. There was a fine crack in the middle of the black rock. If one did not look carefully, they would not realize that this rock was already split in half. Bang! The chief examiner struck out a palm strike again and shattered the rock. He said, "Number 220, Baikung Peak, Mu Heng." Passed. Mu Heng met the gaze Zhang Lai cast on him. He smiled calmly and left. Xiao Chen looked at Mu Heng. He was deep in thought. This was the first time he had seen someone trained his body to such a strong level. Mu Heng's strength might not be able to compare against Xiao Chen's, but his usage of his physical strength was much more exquisite. For Xiao Chen, it would not be a problem for him to shatter one of these black rocks with a fully powered attack of 6,000 kilograms of force. However, if he wished to do it like Mu Heng, to control and focus his strength to a point like a saber blade, it would be impossible. Does not matter, the cultivation of the physical body has many methods, just like martial techniques. I am simply making a mountain out of a molehill. Xiao Chen smiled faintly after he thought things through. Number 240, Qingyan Peak, Yi Chen. After the first stage was conducted for so long, it was finally Xiao Chen's turn. Lu Sufeng's number was 280. He was even further behind than Xiao Chen. When he heard Xiao Chen's name, he encouraged him. "Yi Chen. Good luck." Xiao Chen smiled slightly and nodded. He walked out in great strides to the front of the rocks. He could feel countless gazes focused on him from all directions. On the high platform above the drill grounds, Song Qiu's eyes burned with hatred when Xiao Chen walked out. He could no longer hold his hatred back. He stared at Xiao Chen. He loathed that he could not immediately jump down and smash him to death with one palm. Before Song Qiu met Xiao Chen, he had been blessed with a life flushed with success. After they met, his life started to turn tragic. He was originally a peak martial king, one step away from becoming the youngest martial monarch in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's history. However, he had now lost his arm, and because of his heart demon he lost his hopes of advancing to martial monarch. His strength had decreased significantly, becoming a joke to others. If several big shots of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion were not protecting Yi Chen, he would have already looked for an opportunity to kill Xiao Chen. How hateful. He is an insignificant person, yet he has so many contacts. Song Qiu clenched his remaining hand as he thought to himself hatefully. Song Qiu turned his head to look at the silent Lu Ruyu. He said sinisterly, "Peak Master Lu, your little disciple has come out. I wonder if his performance will exceed Zhang Lai. There should be a pleasant surprise coming." Lu Ruyu took it light-heartedly and smiled. She turned her head and said, "No matter how big the pleasant surprise is, it would not be greater than you losing an arm." Song Qiu's complexion changed. He suppressed the anger in his heart as he said, "That little brat better not let me catch hold of his weak point. Otherwise, I will make sure he lives a life worse than death." Lu Ruyu smiled indifferently. "Whether my disciple will live a life worse than death, I do not know. However, what I do know is that you are definitely currently living a life worse than death. Isn't that right, you old scoundrel?" At the end of her words, Lu Ruyu's smile suddenly vanished as she cursed out viciously. She could no longer endure Song Q's never-ending mockery. Bang! You silly girl, who are you calling an old scoundrel? Song K smashed his palm on the table, his eyes burning with anger. Lu Ruyu was not afraid, a cold look covered her pretty face. I am calling you an old scoundrel. What's wrong with that? Do you want to fight? I don't mind teaching you a lesson on how to be a human. Lu Ruyu's talent had originally been shocking. After she completely absorbed the vitality essence of heaven and earth and consumed the flowing light flower, her strength was now very close to that of a martial king. She was not afraid of the one-armed Song K. The two of you, stop bickering. Fighting in front of the elders' assembly will not be good for you. When the other peak masters saw the atmosphere becoming more tensed, they quickly advised them to stop. Leng Tianzheng eyed Song K as he said, Junior brother Song, you are so old already, don't bicker with the younger generation. Be more understanding. If you had a broken arm, let's see if you would say the same thing. Song K was so angry he trembled. However, he did not dare to lose his temper in front of Leng Tianzheng as he did not have the guts to do so yet. The disputes slowly calmed down after the advice of everyone. Within and outside the drill grounds, the ordinary inner disciples in the spectator stands and the inner sect examinees on the drill grounds were all staring at Xiao Chen. In terms of reputation, the one that was the most spoken about was Xiao Chen. Not long after he arrived at the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, he played Bian Peak's peak martial king, Song K, for a fool. Then, he injured so many Wanren Peak's inner disciples in front of so many people. He even defeated the core disciple Yang Qi. After that, he was quiet for a period of time. However, after he came out, he became even more prominent. He miraculously completed a high-leveled sect mission and obtained an exceptional evaluation, resulting in his rank advancing by 500 in one go. When the second strongest core disciple of Wanren Peak, Lin Feng, wanted to reclaim their honor, he was defeated by Yi Chen with one punch, turning him into a joke. All these things sounded outrageous. No one could believe he was only a martial grand master. There was also another rumor. Every time he made a move, he played some tricks, going against the morals of a cultivator. This rumor was more believable to the crowd compared to the previous hearsay. Now, there was a good opportunity to see Xiao Chen make a move personally in front of everyone. This moment would prove the authenticity of these rumors. Zhang Lai and Mu Heng had already passed the first stage, also looked at Xiao Chen, filled with curiosity. Even though they were training in the mountain, they had also heard some of the rumors about Xiao Chen. However, the two of them were very prideful people. They would not believe in the rumors, especially Zhang Lai, he even found it foolish. I will let you know that when I snatched your place, it was the logical thing. Only a truly strong person can receive the best treatment. This is a principle that has not changed since the ancient times. Zhang Lai grasped his saber tightly as a gleam flashed in his eyes. He stared closely at Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen's eyes were like a mirror, his heart was as calm as still water and his mind was clear. The gazes and sounds of discussions did not affect him at all. There was only one opportunity and he could not use martial techniques. Xiao Chen did not dare to be careless. He swept the black rock with his spiritual sense and discovered that the surface of this rock was extremely smooth. It was also much more resilient than regular iron. However, it should not be a problem. He should be able to deal with it with 50% of his strength. Xiao Chen drew his saber decisively and created a saber light. Shoo! The sharp saber light flashed by in the air and Xiao Chen sheathed his saber in the scabbard with a huang dang sound. There were no changes on the black rock at all, causing people to feel surprised. Ha 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 ha. I wondered how powerful he was. Looks like he is only so. What a pleasant surprise for me. Song Q's gaze had always been fixed on the black rock. He originally thought this would not be a problem for Xiao Chen. However, when he observed it carefully, he discovered that the surface of the rock had no activity at all. Seems like horses all stumble, this fellow was too arrogant. What a great chance to mock him. Song Ke started to laugh out loud. TL note. Horses all stumble. This means men all make mistakes. Wah. Just as Song Ke spoke, a sound came from the black rock, as though it was in reply to Song Ke. It had split into two halves with a ka-ka sound. An intense energy tossed the two halves of the rock into the air like a hurricane. After it flew for a long time, it landed heavily on the ground. Number 240, Qingyan Peak, Yi Chen. Passed. When the rock landed, the chief examiner casually called out. Song Q's complexion seemed to alternate between red and green. He had no idea where to hide his face. He felt like him laughing was slowly turning into a joke. Lu Ruyu did not even bother to hit him when he was down, she simply ignored him. Actually, Xiao Chen had used the intricacies of drawing the saber in this saber strike. Without his martial spirit, the speed of his essence gathering was faster by at least half. With a thought from Xiao Chen, the spinning whirlpool in his dantian immediately released a large amount of essence, gathering them on the saber blade. With the fast speed of essence gathering on the saber and the intricacies of drawing the saber, this saber strike was extremely fast. After all, Song Ke was quite a distance away from the drill grounds and he was in a disturbed state of mind. Even if he was a martial king, it would not be surprising for him to see wrongly under such conditions. Xiao Chen raised his head slightly. He felt a concerned gaze coming from the high platform. He smiled at Lu Ruyu in the distance and walked over to the group of inner disciples who had cleared the stage. The exam on the drill grounds continued to proceed. Following that, there would be some people passing occasionally. Of course, most people failed. Soon, it was Lu Sufeng's turn. When Lu Ruyu saw Lu Sufeng walk out slowly, she started to get nervous again. Lu Sufeng was already 19. If he did not pass this exam, he would not have any more opportunities. This was her only brother, she did not want to see him fail. Lu Sufeng smiled at Lu Ruyu and then nodded at Xiao Chen. After that, he quietly looked at the black rock in front of him. After Lu Sufeng consumed the flowing light flower Xiao Chen gave him, his martial techniques and cultivation techniques had improved rapidly for the past 3 days. His cultivation realm was now firmly stabilized at peak superior grade martial Grand Master. As long as he did not make any mistakes with the execution, there should not be any problems. Break! Lu Sufeng shouted. He drew the small saber hanging at his waist. There was a bright glow on the saber as he hacked at the resilient black rock violently. ZZ. The blade cut into the rock and slid down continuously. Lu Sufeng had already succeeded halfway. However, the expression on his face did not relax. There were many inner disciples before him who had their sabers stuck in the middle after they saber cut into the rock, resulting in their failure. The image of Wang Rong's mocking expression appeared in Lu Sufeng's mind. He increased the amount of force being placed on the saber significantly. With a shua sound, the rock was broken into halves quickly and violently. Qingyan Peak, Lu Sufeng. Pass. Lu Sufeng wiped the sweat off his forehead and walked over to Xiao Chen. They bumped fists firmly as he said joyfully, "I succeeded." "Congratulations," Xiao Chen said sincerely. Lu Sufeng withdrew his smile. "It is not time for congratulations yet. There are 2 more stages, we have to continue to work hard. Don't be too happy yet. Even though you cleared the foundational stage, I will chase you 2 off during the arena battles," Zhang Lai said as he suddenly walked over and confronted Xiao Chen. "Especially you. As long as I am in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, you can forget about becoming a core disciple." Zhang Lai could be said to be flushed with success in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. His future was unlimited. The only thing he could not put down was the fact he had entered Tianyu Peak by means of pulling strings. He had to completely defeat Xiao Chen in order to prove his own worth. Only then could he put down the thorn in his heart. Xiao Chen initially did not have any impression of Zhang Lai. Only when he heard the people beside him mentioning his status did he recall the matter of the Zhang clan's attempted assassination in Evil Wind Valley. Repay kindness with kindness, repay evil with evil. This had always been Xiao Chen's principle when dealing with people. However the Zhang clan treated him, he would repay it sooner or later. However, he had been busy training in Qingyan Peak and had not had the time to deal with this. Since Zhang Lai delivered himself to Xiao Chen, there was no reason for him to let him off. He said indifferently, "I should be the one saying that to you." "We will see." Zhang Lai snorted coldly and left. After a while, the first stage of the core disciple exam finally ended. The chief examiner did a head count. Out of the initial 300 inner disciples, only 100 were left. The first stage of the exam had eliminated 2/3 of the participant. Everyone felt it was horrifying. After the chief examiner counted them, he led everyone to another side of the drill grounds. They stopped before a patch of land about 800 meters wide. There was a thick black cloth covering the surface of it. They could not see what was underneath the black cloth. Wah! The two deputy examiner went forward and pulled aside the dark cloth. A square formation filled with spears sticking out of the ground was revealed to everyone. The sharp spear tips were flickering in the sunlight. When everyone looked at them, they felt their scalps go numb. A portion of the 2-meter spears were buried in the ground. The 20-centimeter long rhombus-shaped spearheads were giving off a cold gleam under the intense sun, showing that they were incredibly sharp. The distance between the spears was wide, a distance of about 1.5 meters. Several tens of thousands of spears formed a rectangular formation, with a length of 1,000 meters and breadth of 400 meters. The chief examiner looked at the people who passed the first stage and said, "The second stage will test your movement techniques. Just stay on top of this spear formation for an hour and you will pass." Immediately after he spoke, the expressions of more than 100 people changed. There were some who rejoiced and some who were anxious. The ones who focused on their movement techniques or had high-ranked movement techniques had relatively joyful expressions. Those inner disciples who placed their efforts in other areas had unsightly expressions. For them to be able to enter the inner sect of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, their movement techniques naturally could not be weak. However, they had not spent large amounts of time on their movement techniques. It would be difficult if they wanted to stay on top of the formation for an hour. These people were already starting to feel nervous. Stay up there for an hour. I'm afraid it will not be that simple, Xiao Chen thought to himself as he looked at the huge formation. If it was simply staying on it for an hour, the size of this spear formation would not be so large. Furthermore, although it would be difficult to stay on it for an hour, without any external interference most of the people present should be able to clear this stage. Pooh! 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 Footsteps could be heard. There were several Jade Maiden Peak female elders dressed in white walking over quickly. They split into groups of 3, each group going to the 4 corners of the spear formation. After the chief examiner saw this group of people, he said, "After you land on the ground, you have failed. Aside from this, there are no rules. Your time starts now." Su. 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 There were many human figures flashing by. Everyone jumped on top quickly. Xiao Chen leapt up gently and found a good landing spot before executing the Azure Dragon cloud soaring art. He became like a flood dragon as he moved around in a circle and landed firmly. Pooh! There was a miserable cry. An inner disciple did not control his strength properly and the sharp spear tips pierced through his shoe. This caused him to lose his balance and fall off immediately. The Jade Maiden Peak elders who were standing guard at the side immediately moved over to where this person landed and brought him out of the spear formation. Then, they removed his shoe and treated his wound. This situation gave everyone an objective understanding of the sharpness of the spear tips. They all could not help but be more cautious. Lu Sufeng leapt up gently and landed beside Xiao Chen. He said in a soft voice, "Yi Chen, why do I feel that something is wrong? This formation is too big. I recognize these Jade Maiden Peak elders, they have very high positions in Jade Maiden Peak. Furthermore, they specialize in healing techniques." Xiao Chen's expression did not change as his body stayed in a state of high alert. He said in a low voice, "We will adapt to the changes. The second stage is definitely not this simple." Xiao Chen had thought deeper than Lu Sufeng did. The final words of the chief examiner also attracted his attention. Did the so-called, "there are no rules" mean they could attack other people as they wished? Although he did not take such an aggressive stance, it was better to be prepared and keep an eye out. Aside from testing the strength of the cultivator's movement techniques, standing on the sharp spear tips also required a strong focus, or else it would be very easy to mess up. It was already somewhat difficult for some of them to stand still on the sharp spear tips. If they could not maintain their balance and jumped around, the sharp spear tips might piece their foot and cause them to fall. Thus, they had to maintain a clear mind. At any sign of instability, they must not leap to another spear. They had to calm themselves down and regain their balance. The bright sun hung high in the sky, the intense sunlight shone mercilessly on everybody's body. There was no wind in the huge drill ground at all, making them feel very frustrated. A few inner disciples lost their balance due to their distracted minds. They had no choice but to start leaping around the spear formation. Not long after, the spear tips pierced through their shoes and injured them. After they injured their feet, they immediately fell down. After that, the elders of Jade Maiden Peak carried them out of the formation. They had lost their right to continue on with the exam. Sweat poured out non-stop from Lu Sufeng's forehead. It flowed into his eyes. It was extremely uncomfortable, but he did not dare to wipe it off with his hands. It was difficult to maintain his balance. If he moved at this moment, he might end up losing his balance and the resulting chain of actions would cause him to fall off. However, if he left the sweat on his forehead, it would be quite unbearable as well. The sweat kept stinging his eyes and his body started to sway. Who? Just as Lu Sufeng was no longer able to stand it, there was a cool breeze. Under the intense sun, it was extremely refreshing. The sweat in his eyes was blown away. Lu Sufeng opened his eyes as the uncomfortable feeling instantly vanished. He looked at Xiao Chen beside him, showing him an expression of gratitude. This cool breeze was naturally the palm wind sent out by Xiao Chen. With his small perfection azure dragon cloud soaring art, he could walk on water without disturbing a drop. To him, this formation was nothing. However, on this spear formation, the number of people who were as at ease as Xiao Chen was only a small number. As time went by, some of these people started to realize something. Now, finally, someone could no longer resist. He shouted and leapt over towards Xiao Chen quickly. Xiao Chen's expression did not change at all. However, when he saw the clothes this person was wearing, he was mildly surprised. He originally thought Zhang Lai would be the first to give up and make a move. He did not expect that the inner disciples of Bian Peak would be the first to make a move. Huang Dang. The 4 Bian Peak disciples drew their sabers and leapt at Xiao Chen. They were able to pass the first stage and were able to jump around freely on the spear tips. The strengths of these 4 people were not simple. They were not your regular superior grade martial grand masters. They were all peak superior grade martial grand masters, just a step shy of becoming martial saints. Yi Chen, what should we do? Lu Sufeng panicked slightly. Movement techniques were not one of his strengths. It was already quite difficult for him to stand on the spear tip without falling. There was no hope for him if he wanted to do battle at the same time. Xiao Chen smiled faintly. There is no need to panic, they are just a bunch of jumping clowns. If they were fighting on flat ground, Xiao Chen might have to spend some effort to deal with them. However, on this field of spear tips, as long as he wished, he could knock off these 4 people within 10 moves. However, because he had to take care of Lu Sufeng, he could not leave the spear he was currently standing on. Hu Kai. 4 streaks of saber lights hacked at Xiao Chen from 4 different directions. They resplendent saber lights were extremely dazzling under the sunlight. Xiao Chen gently pushed his foot on the spear tip and started spinning. He drew the lunar shadow saber with a huang dang sound, and an even more intense saber light appeared in the air. It was as quick as lightning, hacking out at the 4 sabers. Bang! 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 The sabers carried strong forces as they clashed in midair. Saber lights flew around wantonly. There were 4 Kang Chang sounds. Xiao Chen went 1 against 4, but he was not at a disadvantage. He held the lunar shadow saber in his hand and landed firmly back on the spear tip. However, the Bian Peak disciples were knocked flying back by the force of his saber. These 4 people were quite skilled. They somersaulted in midair and dissipated the force before landing back on a spear tip. The sabers in their hands were all pointed at Xiao Chen. Senior brother Yu Qian, this person is not easy to deal with, a Bian Peak disciple spoke to the person leading them. Yu Qian's expression became grave and he said, there is no need to worry. The Peak Master has already said, as long as we can make this person fail the core exam, he will give each one of us 1,000 inferior grade spirit stones. With this 1,000 inferior grade spirit stones, it will not be an issue even if we fail the core disciple exam. The spirit stones will be sufficient for our cultivation. Furthermore, we still have another opportunity next year. There is no need to worry at all. If we have to, we will fail together with him. When the other person heard him, he gave Xiao Chen a purposeful glance and said, that's true. 1,000 inferior grade spirit stones is sufficient for me to break through to martial saint. It would be easy to pass the core disciple exam next year. The 2 of them chatted in front of Xiao Chen, as though he was not present. Xiao Chen maintained a calm expression, grasping his lunar shadow saber tightly. He was not shaken by their words. Yi Chen, be careful. Lu Sufeng suddenly called out. The 2 of them were actually provoking Xiao Chen on purpose, aiming to distract him. Seeing this situation as a chance, the person behind him quietly made a move. He smiled coldly. By letting me get within 3 meters of you, you are finished. Fall off. Mount Tai suppression. A huge mountain appeared behind him. One could indistinctly see animals and birds on it. Not bad. Executing the Mount Tai suppression with such a mysterious phenomenon is a peak superior grade martial grand master. Just purely considering the mysterious phenomenon, he is already equivalent to Song Ke back then. The corner of Xiao Chen's lips curled up into a faint smile. His heart was incredibly calm as he evaluated this martial technique. His spiritual sense extended for about 500 meters around him. All the movements of the 4 Bian Peak disciples were within his grasp. There was no opening at all. The mysterious phenomenon was pretty good. Unfortunately, a strong martial technique required great strength as a foundation. Only then can it bring out true might. Otherwise, it would just be superficial. Ka. Ca. Ka. Ca. The dragon and tiger body sculpting art circulated rapidly. Xiao Chen's bones crackled continuously. He placed the lunar shadow saber into the universe ring and clenched his right hand into a fist. He could feel a boundless energy in his body as he turned around and struck. A huge image of a tiger appeared behind Xiao Chen. The tiger roared loudly and Xiao Chen's aura was instantly raised to its peak, as though he became the king of beasts. Bang! That mountain was shattered by a single punch. The instant the mysterious phenomenon was broken, the person who sneak attacked Xiao Chen vomited a mouthful of blood. His complexion turned pale, as though he was drained of blood. His body swayed like a kite with a broken string as he fell from the sky. Just as he was about to be pierced by a spear, a white figure flew out and caught him. And then, she landed outside the formation. The dragon and tiger body sculpting art together with the fierce tiger leaving the mountains were sufficient to gather all of Xiao Chen's physical strength and essence. Just his physical strength alone gave him 6,000 kilograms of force. This was not inferior to the abundant essence of an inferior grade martial saint, who would have 5,000 kilograms of strength. When comparing these two, Xiao Chen's fist now contained a total of more than 10,000 kilograms of force. With such a horrifying strength, the so-called Mount Tai suppression was a joke. An ordinary inferior grade martial saint would not dare receive this punch. No, junior brother Yao. I'll kill you. Cutting mountain splitting earth. Cloud splitting cross chop. Flipping clouds breaking seas. When they saw their junior brother Yao's sneak attack failed and he was left severely injured after his mysterious phenomenon, the remaining 3 people lost any trace of reason and frantically rushed at Xiao Chen. All sorts of killing moves were executed, all mixed together. 3 peak superior grade martial grandmasters had all executed their killing moves. Naturally, their might was not to be underestimated. The originally hot air now became suffocating. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and moved his left hand into the dragon stance and his right hand into the tiger stance. Then, he crisscrossed his arms and then the 2 beasts merged into him. A flood dragon and a ferocious tiger were now moving around his body. When Xiao Chen circulated the dragon and tiger body sculpting art at the same time, a golden glow immediately surrounded his body. It looked very imposing. A boundless energy started to accumulate within him. The might of the tiger and dragon continuously flowed in without being released. The crouching tiger hidden dragon roars loudly, never fearing the mountains and rivers. Bang! 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 Just before the 3 killing moves landed on Xiao Chen, they loudly crashed into a formless barrier, not able to proceed any further. Explode! Xiao Chen shouted and the energy he had been storing erupted like a spewing volcano. The tiger and dragon roared and countless ripples formed in the air, as if on the surface of water. Facing this continuous torrent of energy, the remaining 3 people did not have any means to resist and were blown backward. During this period of time, Xiao Chen had already cultivated the 4th layer of the dragon and tiger body sculpting art to small perfection, so he was now able to exteriorize a portion of its energy. When he reached great perfection, he would be able to output all the energy, making the dragon hisses tiger roars even more horrifying. Mu Heng, who had his eyes shut and was standing tall like a pine in winter, suddenly opened his eyes. A strange light shone in their depth. What a strong physical body! The dragon and the tiger merging into the body. This physical body cultivation technique should be of the same rank as mine. However, his physical body is not as strong. After my purple jade body tempering art circulates at full force, my body becomes like 100-year-old frost iron, allowing me to cut through metal and break jade with my bare hands. However, this is most likely not his trump card. Such thoughts kept flashing through Mu Heng's mind. It seemed like there was one more competitor for the first place in this core disciple exam. When the group of Tianyu Peak disciples saw the scene in front of them, they were astonished in their hearts. They were already barely hanging on, standing on the spear tips. They did not expect Xiao Chen to be able to exhibit such great combat prowess under such circumstances. Wu Bing, who was beside Zhang Lai, thought for a while and said, "Junior brother Zhang, should we gather some of the senior brothers together and make the first move? Given the strength he is exhibiting now, he will be the biggest obstacle to you obtaining the first place." Just then, 10 of the stronger Tianyu Peak inner disciples came over. Like the few people from Bian Peak, they were able to move about the top of the spear tips freely. Their strength placed them amongst the top. The person leading them looked at Zhang Lai. "Junior brother Zhang, if you want to, you can tell us." The Peak Master had instructed us beforehand that if anything unexpected happened during the exam, Junior brother Zhang may take up the mantle and command us. When Zhang Lai heard this, he felt joyful. He did not expect the Peak Master to trust him so much. However, after mumbling for a while, he gave up on this thought. He cupped his fist in respect and said, "Senior brothers, thank you for the offer. I will definitely live up to the Peak Master's expectation. I will definitely take the first place in this exam. However, that Yi Chen is not the enemy that we need to deal with first. If he only possesses the strength he is showing now, I can easily deal with him. Our biggest opponent is him." Right after Zhang Lai spoke, he turned around and pointed at the low-key Mu Heng of Baikan Peak. When Mu Heng felt Zhang Li's gaze, he looked over and smiled calmly, not caring too much about them. The people beside Zhang Lai were somewhat surprised. Mu Heng was only an inferior grade martial grand master. Was there a need to care so much about him? Zhang Lai did not explain. Instead, he said, "The situation might change later. Wait here first. If my guess is wrong, then we will make a move immediately." The 4 Bian Peak disciples' attack had been too sudden, causing the disciples of the other peaks to be more cautious. What if someone attacked them from behind as well? A cultivator from Qianduan Peak, with a huge saber on his back, quietly stood on the spear tips. The huge saber on his back was almost 2 meters long, 7 centimeters wide and about 1 centimeter thick. Its size was worthy of the term, huge saber, its weight alone being 250 kilograms. He stood on the spear tip with such a heavy saber, yet he did not move at all, carrying it as though it was as light as a feather. It seemed like there was no pressure on him. This caused people to feel astonished. When someone beside him saw the people from Tianyu Peak discussing something, he quietly told him, "Senior brother Gao Yang, there seems to be some activity at the Tianyu Peak's side. Should we do something?" Gao Yang had a very broad face with thick eyebrows. When looked upon, it gave off a heroic impression. He glanced at the group of people from Tianyu Peak and said indifferently, "We will watch quietly and act as per situation. There is no advantage for us, Qianduan Peak disciples, to fight on top of the spear tips." Similar words were being spoken by the disciples of other peaks. Every peak had at least one arrogant disciple. Even though they were not as strong as Zhang Lai and the others, they were outstanding amongst the group. Everyone was discussing countermeasures to prevent the unexpected, to prevent someone from sneak attacking them. Lu Sufeng watched Xiao Chen easily deal with the 4 Bian Peak disciples who attacked him. He could not help but feel sorrowful. They were both superior grade martial grand masters, yet there was such a great difference in their strength. "Yi Chen, is everything fine?" Lu Sufeng asked. Xiao Chen replied, "Not a problem, I only exhausted some of my essence. Be more careful, there is still one more person from Bian Peak who have not made a move yet." After Xiao Chen knocked the 3 people off, he had been using his spiritual sense to monitor the remaining disciple of Bian Peak. He felt that this person had a strong aura. He was stronger than the people earlier, he had hidden himself very well. Xiao Chen originally wanted to rush over and force him off. However, when he thought about it, there was still a Zhang Lai watching him. There was no need to reveal too much of his strength, so he let it go. Time slowly passed by. In a blink of an eye, half an hour went by. Half the time required to pass the exam had passed. There were still slightly more than 80 disciples left in the spear formation. If nothing unexpected happened, these 80 people should have no problems surviving for half an hour. Zhang Lai frowned slightly. He had a nagging feeling that this exam would not be so simple. Now that half an hour had passed and yet there was no activity, some people started to feel suspicious. Never mind, I can't be bothered anymore. I shall make the first move. A murderous intent flashed in Zhang Li's eyes. His eyes were like lamps as they looked at Baikan Peak's Mu Heng. A boundless saber intent condensed in the depths of his eyes. Shoo! Several strands of saber chi appeared in the air. They were like sharp sabers, easily slicing through the air and creating shockwaves as they headed for Mu Heng. Mu Heng had already anticipated Zhang Li's sudden move. However, he did not expect Zhang Li's saber intent to be strong enough to launch saber chi from thin air. Bang! 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 Mu Heng used his palm as a saber and hacked at the saber chi heading towards him. With a metallic, kang chang, sound, Mu Heng easily shattered the saber chi. Do it. Finish him first. Zhang Lai had also expected that Mu Heng would not be easily defeated by a few strands of saber chi. This was just an appetizer. The moment Zhang Lai spoke, the 10-strong Tianyu Peak disciples pushed off against the sharp spear tip and launched themselves at Baikan Peak's Mu Heng. I will deal with them, you don't have to do anything, Mu Heng told the Baikan Peak disciples behind him who were about to help him. Mu Heng stomped heavily on the spear tip below him. Under the heavy force, the body of the spear started bending and it sprang back up with a shoo sound. Mu Heng flew up into the air instantly. Mu Heng, who launched himself into the air with the aid of the spear, pulled out a spear tip as he was flying up. He smiled faintly at the people leaping over to him from his front and threw the spear tip at them. Bang! The spear tip exploded halfway and turning into countless metal shrapnel. The shards were moving at a high speed, creating shockwaves and turning into sharp weapons of slaughter. Clouds around the peak. Zhang Lai shouted and executed the first move of the Lingyun saber technique, clouds around the peak. Suddenly, clouds and mist appeared on the spear formation. The summit of a mountain rose up and blocked all the shrapnel. Numerous dang 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 sounds rang out. When the cloud and mist scattered, everyone realized that mountain image was actually the saber in Zhang Li's hand. The saber had ferociously struck down all the shrapnel instantly. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Mu Heng, who had already moved about 100 meters, casually pulled out another spear and chopped it in half with his palm. With a shoo sound, he threw the halves out. The broken spear halves were spinning in the air quickly. As they flew out, they pulled in the air from their surroundings, creating 3-meter tornadoes around themselves. I can't carry on like this. Zhang Lai shouted, help me block this move, I'll chase after him. Su. Su. 4 inner disciples leapt out from behind him. They moved in different directions, 2 on each side. They pulled their sabers out at the same time, each creating a 10-meter high saber light to hack at the tornadoes. Zhang Lai did not care about the results of their moves. He did not hesitate at all as he moved through the space between the tornadoes and charged rapidly at Mu Heng. When Mu Heng saw Zhang Lai coming after him alone, he revealed a smile. He stomped on the spear tip and there was an explosion. The spear tip immediately turned into countless pieces as he flew backward. Bang! 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 Every step Mu Heng took would result in an explosion of the spear tip below him. They turned into countless shards of metal shrapnel, moving at high speed and creating shockwaves. Like the rain of a torrential storm, they fired at Zhang Lai who was following him. Zhang Lai took a look and saw a wave of lethal shrapnel obscuring his vision. There were so many they were uncountable. If he wanted to continue the chase, he would have to break through this storm of shrapnel. In order to do so, he would have to use a significant amount of essence. He felt like he had fallen for Mu Heng's trap. Zhang Lai thought to himself, however, it is impossible for him to know that I cultivate a superior grade Earth-ranked cultivation technique. The amount of essence I have in reserve is definitely much more than him. When Zhang Lai thought of this, he revealed a mocking smile as he shouted, "Spinning mountain destroys clouds." This was the second move of the Lingyun saber technique. A mysterious phenomenon was condensed, a mountain appeared from nowhere. To everyone's surprise, the mountain actually started spinning. Rumble. The mountain spun, and the entire drill grounds started shaking. There were a few unfortunate inner disciples who immediately fell from the spear tips. When Xiao Chen saw that both the Lingyun saber technique moves Zhang Lai executed had mysterious phenomena, Xiao Chen was secretly astonished. He did not expect Zhang Li's talent to be so high. However, being able to create mysterious phenomena does not mean that his comprehension of Lingyun saber technique is deeper than mine, Xiao Chen said to himself indifferently. Mysterious phenomena were a kind of supplement for martial techniques. However, if the mysterious phenomenon was not complete and was recklessly manifested, there would be a huge backlash on their essence when it was broken. Back when Xiao Chen was fighting Chu Chaoyun, he had suffered a huge disadvantage. His opponent only used half a move to destroy the mysterious phenomenon of his moonbright-like fire. This resulted in a backlash to his essence, and he completely lost his combat abilities. Hence, Xiao Chen had always been very cautious of using mysterious phenomena after that. There were two ways to destroy mysterious phenomena. The first was to find the weak point of the mysterious phenomenon, like Chu Chaoyun did back then. The second was to break it forcefully, to use absolute power to shatter the opponent's mysterious phenomenon, like Xiao Chen did earlier. No one knew which method Mu Heng would choose to use. The spinning mountain was a few hundred meters tall, with an unknown width. There were turbulent winds as it covered the sky, turning the place dark. The brightly burning sun was completely covered by it. The rain-like small metal fragments struck the mountain peak with ding ding dang dang sounds. They were completely useless, and fell to the ground. Mu Heng turned around to take a look, his expression not surprised in the least. He stared at the illusion of the spinning mountain peak. It was the only thing he saw, nothing but that. As the mountain drew nearer, Mu Heng still did not have any change in his expression. It was as though he did not know he could be easily crushed by it when it got near to him. I still can't find the weak point. It is too difficult to find the weak point of the mysterious phenomenon. Mu Heng mentally shook his head and sighed. Although the mysterious phenomenon Zhang Lai exhibited was not perfect, it was not easy to find its weak points. Since I cannot find it, then I will smash you to bits, Mu Heng shouted, and leapt into the air. A purple glow appeared on his skin, like the glow of jade. Break for me. A plain palm smashed on the spinning mountain. With a loud bang, the revolving mountain finally came to a stop. The instant the mountain and his palm came into contact, they generated a surging shockwave. There were ripples in the air, spreading in all directions. It was like surging waves of the ocean. The shockwave did not differentiate between friend or foe. If it swept across the spear formation, a significant number of people would be knocked off the spear formation. The disciples of every peak could no longer stand still and simply protect themselves, they all made a move. Bang! 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 Immediately there was a string of explosions on the drill ground. When the people in the spectator stands saw this, they were all astonished. This exam was even more fierce and intense than the one before it. Hu Kai. Xiao Chen hacked out with his saber and split the surging shockwave into two, easily resolving the danger. He continued to stare at the two people in the air. The illusion of the mountain in the sky already vanished. Zhang Lai held onto his saber and blocked the seemingly ordinary blow from Mu Heng, who soared through the air at him. It appeared that this ordinary blow, when augmented with his strength, was somewhat stronger than Zhang Lai. The mysterious phenomenon was not broken, but it could be considered to be blocked. He had forced Zhang Lai to a point where he did not dare to maintain the mysterious phenomenon. The two of them were not using their full power when fighting each other. After all, they had not reached the climax of the match, and were still testing one another out. Of course, if there was a chance, they would happily knock their opponent down. Zhang Lai held his saber and retreated backward. He jumped onto several spear tips before he stabilized himself. Coincidentally, he landed somewhere not far from the Qianduan Peak disciples. When Zhang Lai saw Mu Heng landing firmly, he was rather shocked. When they were testing each other out, he was the one at the disadvantage. Although he had only used 30% of his strength, it was hard to say whether his opponent was doing the same. Mu Heng's attacks were not fanciful at all. He did not even use martial techniques. The few moves he made were straightforward attacks relying on the pure strength of his physical body. Do you still wish to continue fighting? I am willing to accompany you at any time, Mu Heng spoke for the first time, as he looked at Zhang Lai. Continuing to fight like this was not a wise action. They still had not reached the final arena battles yet. If both of them were injured, it would only benefit others. Zhang Lai considered the implications of this. Pu Si. Before Zhang Lai could say anything, Qianduan Peak's Gao Yang, who was carrying a huge saber, drew the huge saber with his right hand. He left an afterimage in the air and made a move against Zhang Lai. There was a loud boom in the air. The speed of this person was actually close to the speed of sound. He crossed a distance of 100 meters in an eye blink. The huge and heavy saber hacked out at Zhang Lai. It was completely unexpected. Gao Yang had not revealed any killing intent earlier. By the time Zhang Lai felt the killing intent and heard the sonic boom, the huge saber was only 1 centimeter away from the back of his head. Zhang Lai, who had comprehended saber intent, had a more sensitive perception than regular cultivators. The moment the huge force was about to strike him, he stomped his foot on the spear tip below him violently. The spear sank down with a wah sound. Zhang Li's body also sank downward together with the spear. His fluttering hair was cut by the saber. His hair was now flying all over the place. He had narrowly avoided this saber. When Gao Yang's move did not succeed, he quickly withdrew his saber and retreated. He returned to where the other Qianduan Peak disciples were. There was a calm expression on his face, no signs of any disturbance at all. You dared to sneak attack me. Zhang Lai turned around and shouted angrily at Gan Yang. Junior brother Zhang, are you alright? Wu Bing asked anxiously after he led the other Tianyu Peak disciples over quickly. Zhang Lai landed on another spear tip and tidied his shortened hair. He was revealing killing intent with his eyes towards Gao Yang as he said indifferently, I am fine. However, someone will be in trouble soon. Gao Yang was not afraid nor panicking. His heroic face revealed a crafty smile as he pointed at Mu Heng and Xiao Chen. He said, I am not your opponent. It is him, and him. If you do not wish to expose all your trump cards before the arena battles, you can fight with me. Underneath his heroic background, Gao Yang had acute senses. He was able to see the pros and cons, reading the situation clearly. Zhang Lai snorted coldly, trump card. Are you even worthy of me revealing my trump cards? Shoo. A few strands of saber chi appeared in the air silently, hacking the air apart and creating shockwaves. They were fired at Gao Yang's head. Dang! Dang! The huge saber moved quickly, shielding Gao Yang's front like a wooden plank. It blocked the offending saber chi, but he had underestimated their strength. When the saber chi struck his blade, the blade vibrated continuously. Gao Yang felt his arm go numb, and he almost dropped his saber. Hence, he quickly gripped the hilt with both hands. When Zhang Lai saw the situation, he laughed coldly. With so little strength, you dare to say you will expose my trump cards? You overestimate yourself. In the distance, Lu Sufeng looked at the sudden change in the situation. He felt suspicious as he said, "Why did those two people start fighting? I know that Gao Yang. This is the third time he is participating in the core disciple exam. He is very strong, but he should not be Zhang Li's match." Xiao Chen laughed and said, "That person is very scheming. He was feigning weakness earlier. There was no reason for him to just barely block those saber chi attacks. What is he thinking? Is he not afraid of Zhang Lai really making a move to destroy him?" Lu Sufeng asked, suspecting a trick. Xiao Chen withdrew the smile on his face and said seriously, "This is where his brilliance lies. He probably has a sure kill move or something like that. It is possible that from the moment Zhang Lai landed in front of him, he could have ended it." Who? Just as Xiao Chen spoke, the originally bright sky suddenly turned dark. A strong wind blew up the sand on the ground, dust filled the air. Zhang Lai, who was originally prepared to deal with Gao Yang, turned grave. He discovered there was an essence shield in front of him, blocking the sand. He felt suspicious as he said, "What's going on? Why did such a strong wind suddenly appear? Is there a change in weather?" Gao Yang looked at this sudden gust of strong wind. Zhang Lai had stopped because of it. He could not help but feel slightly disappointed. How unfortunate. After the strong wind disappeared, a black flag appeared in front of everyone's eyes. It flew over from the horizon, getting nearer until it reached the drill grounds. The flag had a black background with white words and yellow borders. There were two words on the fluttering flag, Heaven Saber. The flag's pole had simple floral patterns and a golden dragon coiling around it. The speed of the flag's flight was very slow, but the might it carried was very shocking. Everywhere it passed, the air parted like it was water. An inner disciple did not know what it was. In the end, he was knocked off by the flag and vomited a big mouthful of blood. The Jade Maiden Peak elders immediately caught him. He had lost his right to continue with the exam. Scatter. Everyone paled as they scattered everywhere. They looked at the black flag as they made way for it. Before long, the flag flew to an area not far from the front of Xiao Chen. Suddenly, the chief examiner, who was on the ground, said, "Only by capturing a black flag will one pass this exam. Whoever who captures a flag will end their exam immediately." After the chief examiner spoke, the flag which people avoided immediately turned into an object of high demand. Everyone did all they could to snatch the flag. Lu Sufeng, who was behind Xiao Chen, could not resist and wanted to make a move. This was because he and Xiao Chen were the ones closest to the flag. If they made a move, it was very likely they could obtain the flag. "Don't make a move first," Xiao Chen quickly said. Lu Sufeng did not understand and asked, "Why? After we obtain it, we can jump down immediately and end this exam. There should not be any problems." Xiao Chen pointed and said, "Look at those people, the ones with true strength in the sect. Have any of them made a move?" When Lu Sufeng heard this, he realized it was as Xiao Chen said. Mu Heng, Zhang Lai, Gao Yang, and such people did not make a move. It was as though nothing was related to them. "I got it." A Gangyu Peak disciple shouted excitedly as he grabbed the flag pole in one hand. Boom. Just as he wanted to jump off the spear formation, all sorts of attacks flew at him. All these attacks look spectacular and very dense. Aside from the Gangyu Peak disciple, the disciples of other peaks all executed their strongest attacks. With so many attacks, even if he was an inferior grade martial saint, he would not be able to block them. How could a martial grandmaster do so? Before he could land on the ground, he was severely injured. He was completely covered in wounds, and blood was flowing out. The black flag left his hand and returned to the sky. Lu Sufeng's heart was beating very hard and fast when he saw this. Fortunately, Xiao Chen had stopped him. Otherwise, the one lying on the ground now could be him. How pitiful. That person will require at least 3 months to recover. That's too cruel. They did not hold back their attacks at all. What's going on with this round of the core disciple exam? When the inner disciples on the spectator stand saw the tragic situation, they were astonished. The previous core disciple exams were intense as well, but this exam was just tragic. It was incredibly cruel. The exam could only end after the flag is captured. With so many people here, there would definitely be more than one flag. Hence, there was no need to rush for one. Whoever who got the first flag would definitely suffer from the attacks of everyone. This was the principle of, the shot hits the bird that pokes its head out. Even if it was Xiao Chen, he would not have been able to escape the earlier situation unscathed. Xiao Chen extended out his spiritual sense and searched in the direction the flag came from. He kept extending it until he saw the master of the flag more than 1,000 meters away from the drill grounds. A black-clothed man was standing on a tall tower. There were 5 flags fluttering noisily in the wind behind him. The face of this person was blurred out by the sun. The qi and blood of his body were incomparably exuberant. Combined with the flags behind him, his aura was surging. He had the might of a powerful army, as though he could trample on the heavens. He was close to 2,000 meters away from them, the limit of Xiao Chen's spiritual sense. Hence, Xiao Chen was not able to clearly see this person's appearance, he could only get a vague image. This person is a peak martial king at the very least. The Heavenly Saber Pavilion is certainly full of hidden talents. There are experts everywhere, Xiao Chen sighed to himself. Through his spiritual sense, he could see 5 black flags in that person's surroundings. The flags were spinning continuously, a spiraling stream of air appearing in front of them. Su. In the next moment, the 5 flags headed for the formation on the drill ground. Initially, they were very fast. When they got nearer, they slowed down. However, this reduction in speed was relative, it only became slower to high-ranked cultivators. Ordinary people or low-ranked cultivators would not be able to tell the difference. To them, it was several times faster than a chariot. Shoo. This time, some of the stronger inner disciples on the spear tips did not hold back. Their essence soared and they shot out, leaving after images behind. Lu Sufeng saw that Xiao Chen still did not make a move. He asked, "Yi Chen, are you still not making a move? The number of flags is probably limited. After every batch is fired, that is 1 batch less." Xiao Chen said indifferently, "You can go snatch, it is not time for me yet." Su. Another 10 flags flew over again. The wind blew strongly in the formation, dust flew everywhere. This time, everyone was fired up. Even some of the people who wanted to hide themselves made a move. The wind was blowing strongly and sand was everywhere in the formation. There were many figures in the air, chasing after the flags continuously. The battle was incredibly tragic. Occasionally, there would be someone who got sneak attacked, causing them to lose their right to continue the exam. However, even under such conditions, there were some people who did not make a move. They simply stood quietly on the spear tips. They were not anxious at all, it was as though they had forgotten the requirements of the exam. Aside from Xiao Chen, Zhang Lai, Mu Heng, and Gao Yang, there was one person from each of the other 3 peaks who did not make a move. These 7 people each represented a peak. In reality, they were also the strongest 7 people in this exam. "I finally got it," a Tianyu Peak disciple shouted as he hugged his flag after he landed on the ground. He ignored the cuts all over his body. His wounds were dripping with blood as he revealed a joyful smile. The Jade Maiden Peak elders rushed over immediately and checked his injuries. The chief examiner nodded his head and recorded down his number. Someone had finally passed the second stage of the exam. Shoo, shoo, shoo. The tragic battle continued. There were people who jumped off continuously with flags, successfully passing the stage. However, there were more people who were covered in wounds. They fell off empty-handed, losing the right to continue the exam. Lu Sufeng grabbed a black flag and an excited smile appeared on his face. He executed his movement technique with all his might, doing his best to dodge all the attacks sent at him. It seemed like he was about to succeed in avoiding all the attacks when a few figures chased after him. At this moment, Lu Sufeng was exhausted, he had no means of moving around in midair. The situation seemed dire. Purple thunder, true fire. Shoot. A boundless, limitless flame started burning in Xiao Chen's right eye. Streams of flames shot out at the people in the air like arrows. The speed of the flaming arrows was very fast. The few people in the sky did not have time to dodge and were struck. They cried miserably and fell to the ground. Lu Sufeng took advantage of this opportunity and quickly landed. It's a little strange, that flame seems to be quite extraordinary. However, it has been exposed. It should be easy to deal with now. One of the 7 people not making a move muttered to himself. The moment Xiao Chen's spiritual sense detected Lu Sufeng landing on the ground safely, he completely relaxed. Although he had exposed one of his trump cards, it was worth it. The strong wind scattered and the 15 black flags were finally all snatched away. The Tianyu Peak disciples were indeed strong. Out of the 15 flags, about half were snatched away by them. The remaining people noticed the 7 people who did not make a move. They knew that something was not quite right and they all tacitly jumped down, giving up their right to continue the exam. At this moment, it became extremely quiet. No one would expect that there was chaos here just a minute ago. Only the blood-stained sand silently spoke of the tragic battle that just occurred. The inner disciples in the spectator stands, the inner disciples who did not pass, and the peak masters and main hall elders on the high platform focused on those 7 people. This first place of this core disciple exam will definitely come from out of these 7 people. This exam is extraordinarily intense. It is just the second stage and more than 200 people have been eliminated. There are only 20-odd disciples left. If the rules were like the past, with 50 spots of core disciples, all of these people should have passed. There are definitely less than 50 spots. You can tell with one glance that this exam is not simple. I think there are at most 10 spots. I wonder how many flags will fly over in this batch. If there are less than 7, then some people out of this strongest 7 will be eliminated. The ordinary inner disciples in the spectator stands looked at the 7 people. They all had complicated expressions. These people, due to various reasons, were not able to become core disciples. However, when they saw this core disciple exam, they felt that they were fortunate. The blood below the formation did not come from nowhere. They were left by the inner disciples taking part in this exam. Several of them almost died. Aside from those who had given up on their own initiative, almost no one had come out unscathed. Although the identity of core disciple is very tempting, such tragic competition caused one to feel frightened. Hu Kai. Suddenly, a strong wind blew, causing sand to fill the air. 5 black flags flew over from afar, heading towards the spear formation. When they felt the number of flags, the 7 people could not help but feel anxious. There were only 5 flags. That meant that out of them, 2 would be eliminated. Gao Yang was frowning heavily. He was 19 years old already. If he did not succeed this time, he would have no more opportunities to become a core disciple, he could not afford to lose here. It was not that he did not want to snatch one of the earlier 15 flags. However, he knew that with his strength, if he made the first move, he would encounter fierce attacks. Even if he got the flag, he would expose his trump cards. It would not be good for the arena battles. Su, the remaining disciple from Jade Maiden Peak, Wang Mei, made the first move. Her petite body left behind a white shadow in the air. She managed to grab a flag instantly and headed for the ground. Senior Sister Wang, sorry for the offense, the remaining disciple from Gangyu Peak, Zhao Heng, said to Wang Mei. He immediately flew forward and snatched the same flag. The two of them wasted no time speaking nonsense. They simply started fighting in midair as each held a corner of the flag. Xiao Chen did not look at the two of them. He did not even bother to look at the flags in the air. He flashed by in the air and rushed at the final Bian Peak disciple on the spear formation. Clouds around the peak. He pulled the lunar shadow saber from its scabbard with a huang dang sound. The snow-white blade contained the intent of the Lingyun saber technique without revealing it. It was like a lonely mountain peak piercing through the clouds, pointing at the sky in anger. Although this saber strike did not create a mysterious phenomenon, its might was incomparable. When compared to what Zhang Lai executed, regarding pure force, it was significantly stronger. However, it was somewhat weaker regarding aura. Cutting mountains and splitting stone. Contrary to what Xiao Chen expected, Lu Jun did not choose to dodge Xiao Chen's mighty saber strike. Instead, he chose to meet it head-on. Bang! The sabers clashed. Two streaks of resplendent saber light gave off an intense explosion. Where the weapons struck, the air trembled. The huge force radiated through the saber blades and transmitted into the two of them. They each retreated a step back, moved onto another spear tip, and stabilized their bodies. They both suffered equally. If they were to examine this carefully, Xiao Chen's saber strike was actually at a slight disadvantage. The grade of clouds around the peak was higher than cutting mountains and splitting stone, yet, he was only able to achieve a draw. Lu Jun revealed traces of a proud smile. You did not expect that, right? I cultivate the pure yang true art. It is a peak earth-ranked cultivation technique. In terms of the quality and density of essence, there is no one within the same cultivation level who can surpass me. I will defeat you openly. Go and die. 3 flowing cloud images. Lu Jun's body shook, and 3 images of him appeared in front of Xiao Chen. Each of these images sent out a saber strike. The saber lights came one after another, like a gushing river rushing at Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen smiled faintly. You added your own comprehensions into the 3 flowing cloud images. Furthermore, you chained them perfectly. You really do have the capital to be arrogant. Spinning mountain destroys clouds. The illusion of a mountain appeared before Xiao Chen. He moved in a flash and the mountain merged into his body. Suddenly, his aura changed. He was like a mountain rising high from the ground, piercing the sky. Xiao Chen performed a side flip, and the lunar shadow saber moved from top to down, sending out an intense wind. This caused the 3 images Lu Jun created to blow back. Pu Si. By the time Xiao Chen completed his side flip, a horrifying gash had appeared on Lu Jun's chest. Blood spurted out of his wound. Lu Jun looked at his wound in disbelief. He pointed at Xiao Chen and said, "Pain, you." Bang! Xiao Chen whipped out his leg, and there was the sound of an intense wind. He mercilessly kicked Lu Jun out. Unfortunately, sometimes having more essence does not guarantee a win. Not far away, Zhang Lai was watching the two of them, dumbfounded. It was like a bomb exploded in his mind. The Lingyun saber technique could actually be used this way. My Lingyun saber technique manifests the mysterious phenomenon externally and then supplements my martial technique. However, his mysterious phenomenon is withdrawn, stored in his body without unleashing it, focusing on his strength. One is internal, and the other is external. However, they are simply different means to the same end. There was no difference in which is stronger or weaker. The most important thing is our individual comprehension, Zhang Lai thought to himself. Many thoughts flashed through his mind. However, I have comprehended saber intent. I did not infuse saber intent into the attack I exhibited earlier. When I infuse my saber intent, its might will be stronger than his for sure. After Xiao Chen dealt with the final Bian Peak inner disciple, he waved his hand, intending to pull the black flag flying by him over with a suction force. Kai. Kai. However, before Xiao Chen could obtain the flag, a few strands of saber chi appeared out of nowhere and sliced the black flag into 5 pieces, destroying it. Xiao Chen's face sank, and he looked at Zhang Lai, who was 200 meters in front of him. He did not expect his opponent to be so vicious. To think he actually destroyed one of the last 5 flags. When Zhang Lai felt Xiao Chen's gaze, he laughed confidently. I will deal with you thoroughly in this stage. Let's see whose Lingyun saber technique is better. Zhang Lai actually destroyed a flag. What is he doing? This fellow is overconfident. There are 7 people vying for 5 flags. There were not enough in the first place, yet he destroyed one. Many of the inner disciples in the spectator stands were unable to understand Zhang Li's actions. This was because there was no need to push themselves to such drastic straits before the final stage. Bang! Just as everyone's gaze was attracted to Xiao Chen and Zhang Lai, the previously silent Gao Yang suddenly made his move. An eye-piercing saber light lit on his huge, 2-meter-long saber instantly. Berserk Dragon burst. He shouted angrily as explosions occurred continuously under his feet. Every time there was an explosion, his speed would increase. After 5 such explosions, his speed reached an unimaginable level. Furthermore, the target of his attack was quite surprising. It was actually Wang Mei and Zhao Heng, who were having an intense fight. This was the crucial moment of their fight. They were not able to dodge. I will be taking this flag. Gao Yang laughed. He used his huge saber to sweep across the air, and a massive force knocked Wang Mei and Zhao Heng off without mercy. The 2 of them vomited mouthfuls of blood and fell towards the ground. They looked at Gao Yang with extreme dissatisfaction and cursed out, "Gao Yang. You are too shameless. Su." Gao Yang snagged the black flag and ignored livid cursing of the 2 people. He revealed an excited expression as he said, "Everyone, I shall be taking my leave first. You can take your time and have fun." Gao Yang leapt across several spear tips. The effects of his berserk dragon burst had not worn off yet. After a few explosions, he was several hundred meters away. He was just a step shy of reaching the ground. Just at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. That person revealed a faint smile as he blocked Gao Yang's path, watching him silently. "Mu Heng, what are you doing? There are still 3 more flags, enough for each one of you. What is the point of blocking me?" Gao Yang asked sullenly as his expression changed. Mu Heng did not waste time speaking nonsense and went straight to the point, "Put down the flag and scram. In your dreams." Gao Yang roared, and an explosion erupted under his feet again. His speed was now so fast his after-image was not even visible anymore. He was very close to the speed of sound. Mu Heng's expression did not change. An intense purple light suddenly engulfed his entire body. All his muscles and skin were like translucent jadeite. It felt like they were translucent. Suddenly, Gao Yang appeared behind Mu Heng. His enormous saber carried an immense force as he hacked violently at Mu Heng, who did not seem to react at all. Everyone who saw this felt as though their hearts were in their throat. The martial techniques of Qiantuan Peak were famous for being berserk and forceful. In regards to physical strength, they were the undisputed leader amongst the 7 peaks. If this saber strike landed, even if one were not chopped in half, he would be severely injured. He would at least be bedridden for half a year. To any cultivator, wasting half a year like this would be unacceptable. Dang! There was a metallic clang. The purple light on Mu Heng's back trembled. He received this saber strike without suffering any damage. Gao Yang was stunned. Mu Heng quickly spun around and moved his right hand. He grabbed the huge saber that Gao Yang was attempting to pull back. However, with Gao Yang's strength, he would be unable to beat Mu Heng's right hand. The extreme speed of the Berserk Dragon burst is indeed shocking. Unfortunately, you are unable to break through my defenses. Everything is for naught, Mu Heng said indifferently as he looked at Gao Yang, whose forehead was continuously dripping with sweat. I fell into his trap. If I had attacked him continuously from the start, he would not be able to catch me given my speed. Before my Berserk Dragon burst ends, I might be able to break through his defense. Sometimes, a moment of hesitation would mean the difference between victory and defeat. How hateful! Gao Yang shouted lividly. He let go of his saber and retreated quickly, using a few more Berserk Dragon bursts while he still had the essence to support it. Ka-ca. Mu Heng casually broke Gao Yang's saber. The massive saber broke into countless metal bits as though it were fragile, falling to the ground with a ting-ting-dang-dang sound. When Mu Heng saw Gao Yang fleeing, he smiled faintly. His body vanished from the air and appeared before Gao Yang in the next instant. He said indifferently, "The game ends here." His right palm was flashing with purple light as he used it to hack at Gao Yang's chest in a demonic fashion. This palm looked very ordinary, but in fact, it was backed by a horrifying physical strength. It was no weaker than Xiao Chen's full-powered strike. Ka-ca ka-ca. One could hear the sound of Gao Yang's ribs breaking. Then, he vomited mouthful after mouthful of blood. Gao Yang's face was tightly scrunched up in pain. He pointed lividly at Mu Heng and accused, "You lied to me." Bang! Mu Heng kicked Gao Yang's shoulder. He used the counter force of this kick to push himself back into the spear formation. He held the flag and watched Gao Yang, who landed on the ground. He laughed heartlessly. "That's right. I was messing around with you." Gao Yang was intelligent and played many tricks. However, in the end, not only had he lost his right to continue, but he was also played by someone else. He was so angry, he trembled. He could not accept this and fainted. The move Mu Heng used earlier was the secret technique of Baiken Peak, 7 stars transposition. It instantaneously moves one a short distance. This Gao Yang received his just deserts. He sneak attacked several people. In the end, he got played like that. It serves him right. You can't really say that. This round of competition is simply too cruel. Playing a little trick is nothing. His skill is probably not up to par. However, what's going on with Mu Cheng? Why is he not going down even though he obtained a flag? Why did he jump back up? Most of the crowd in the spectator stand were not too sympathetic to Gao Yang's plight. After all, the things he did were quite atrocious. Shua. Just as everyone was still discussing the earlier matters, Mu Heng did something very astonishing. He broke the flag in his hand. Shoo. Zhang Lai and Xiao Chen made a move at the same time. They each broke a flag. Out of the final 5 flags, only one remained for the 3 of them, drifting about slowly. What are they doing? The 3 of them clearly obtained the flags. They could end this stage already. Why do I have a feeling they intend to start the final battle early? I really don't understand the exam this time. It is just the 2nd stage, and yet it is so intense. What is going on? The 3 of them have forced themselves into a dead end. Only one of them will obtain the flag. The remaining 2 will be eliminated. Not only did the people who passed the stage and those on the ground not understand the current situation, but the other inner disciples and the various peak masters were also clueless as to why they brought forward the final battle. The second elder, who stood next to first elder Zhang Kai on the highest platform with the other elders, laughed lightly. These three people seem to have understood your intentions. I wonder who the first elder favors more. The strength of these three easily obtains a top 10 position of any of the past core disciple exams. They are very strong. It does not really matter who wins or loses. Zhang Qi's gaze was as deep as still water, resulting in no one being able to know what he was thinking. The third elder beside them said, "First brother Zhang Kai, if those peak masters are aware of what we are doing, would they have any problems?" The first elder spoke expressionlessly, "No one can interfere in what I have decided." When the other elders heard this, their chests tightened. They all kept their mouths shut and stopped discussing the question. On the formation of countless spears, Xiao Chen, Mu Heng, and Zhang Lai each took a corner, raising their aura incessantly. The qi and blood of the three became incomparably vigorous. As their auras were continuously rising, the air in the drill ground seems to have turned vicious, making it difficult for people to breathe. The flag floated between the three of them. Suddenly, the force supporting it vanished and it slowly drifted to the ground. Their gazes never left the flag. There was a strange glow in all of their eyes. Su. In the next instant, there were three intense winds blowing, scattering the viscous air and kicking up countless particles of sand into the air. The three of them made their moves at the same time, each using their own movement techniques. They all tried to snatch the flag that descended downwards. 7 stars transposition. Traceless water treading. Azure dragon tail whip. Mu Heng strangely vanished into thin air. Zhang Lai gently pushed off with his feet and left behind ripples like that of water's surface, leaving behind multiple after images in the air. An azure dragon appeared around Xiao Chen and roared. An image of an azure whip appeared in the air. The three of them executed their best skills as they flew toward the falling black flag. In the end, Xiao Chen's azure dragon cloud soaring art was a notch faster. The azure light quickly grabbed the flag. The azure dragon cloud soaring art was, after all, a heaven-ranked movement technique. Even though he only practiced it to small perfection, there would be no cultivator in the same cultivation realm who could surpass Xiao Chen in regards to movement techniques. It seemed like it was almost at the same time, when Xiao Chen had just grabbed onto the flag, that Zhang Lai and Mu Heng landed and stretched their hands for the flag. Xiao Chen pulled gently, and the flag flew through the air and landed behind Xiao Chen. The two of them managed to grab nothing but air. 100 mountainous winding paths. Myriad mountains perpetual shadows palm. Zhang Lai and Mu Heng did not hesitate at all. They made their moves at the same time. Zhang Lai executed the third move of the Lingyun saber technique. Instantly, he materialized a mysterious phenomenon of hundreds of mountains superimposed over each other, turning the sky dark. On the other hand, Mu Heng circulated the purple jade body tempering art. Hundreds of purple figures flashed, surrounding him, making it difficult for one to distinguish the real from amongst the fake. Xiao Chen revealed a grave expression. These people were no ordinary superior grade martial grand masters. One had comprehended saber intent. Furthermore, his talent was great. The other tempered his physical body, turning his body into a saber. His pure attacking force was superior to Xiao Chen's. Regardless of where he was, he would be considered a monstrous genius. 100 mountainous winding paths. I know that as well. Xiao Chen recollected his thoughts and smiled faintly. The illusion of hundreds of mountains appeared behind him as well. However, this illusion only lasted for an instant before merging into his body. The snow-white blade of the lunar shadow saber instantly lit with a resplendent glow. This was not saber light, it was the pure mysterious phenomenon of the Lingyun saber technique infused into the saber blade. Xiao Chen's essence also poured into the saber blade at the same time. In a short while, the glow became even more resplendent. It was like a miniature sun, turning the dark sky incredibly bright. "Break for me!" Xiao Chen shouted. He hacked furiously at the unending chain of mountains. A heaven-shaking, earth-shattering rumble sounded out endlessly. The mountains trembled and the entire drill ground started to shake relentlessly. The air started moving with an intense wind current. Some of the spear tips on the ground were unable to withstand the pressure and were plucked out of the ground and thrown into the air. Bang! The mountains vanished, and Zhang Lai appeared in the air with a somewhat pale face. He moved downward slowly, and the sunlight shone on the ground once more, making the area feel hot. Hu Kai. Xiao Chen's movements did not stop at all. After he knocked back Zhang Lai, he quickly spun and swapped the lunar shadow saber to his left hand. He circulated the dragon and tiger body sculpting art, and the bones in his body repeatedly crackled with a pili pala sound. The muscles of Xiao Chen's body visibly increased in size. A mammoth image of a tiger appeared before him, roaring loudly and unceasingly. This raised Xiao Chen's aura by another level. Fierce tiger leaving the mountains. The several hundred figures around Mu Heng merged back together when they were near Xiao Chen. His aura also raised to its peak. When facing against the aura of the King of 100 Beasts, it was not inferior at all. "Explode for me!" Mu Heng shouted furiously. The purple jade-like right palm carried the several hundred images combined force and met Xiao Chen's fist without hesitation. Boom! When the fist and palm met, it seemed like a heaven-shattering clap of thunder rang out in the quiet drill ground, reverberating in the ears of the crowd. It caused their eardrums to tremble. Some of the weaker cultivators even went deaf temporarily. A shockwave surged out violently in waves, moving in all directions. The spears that were sent flying turned to dust and scattered into the wind. The two of them retreated. They instantly moved back by several hundred meters. Xiao Chen completed a somersault in midair and landed gently on a spear tip. Then, he slowly grabbed onto the black flag he had been protecting behind his back. On the other hand, Mu Heng was not as at ease as Xiao Chen. Every step he took, a spear tip would explode. He only managed to stop after he ruined 100 spear tips. One palm and one fist. The two of them completely relied on the power of their physical bodies. They had struck a draw. Although all this took a long time to describe, this was just one move exchanged between Xiao Chen and the two of them. It only took a few breaths. The three of them stood in their corners, regulating their energies. They were not in a rush to make a move. The turbulent situation on the spear formation calmed down immediately. However, everyone knew that this was simply the calm before the storm. Indeed, after a moment, Zhang Lai and Mu Heng both shouted and rushed at Xiao Chen. Now, the two of them knew that they were not a match for Xiao Chen with their strengths. They could only work together to take him down. The corner of Xiao Chen's mouth curled up gently. He immediately roared as he felt a rising emotion. Ever since he left the Xiao clan, he had never truly fought to his heart's content. Every opponent he met was either too weak or too strong. Now that he had met two opponents of similar strength, he would enjoy it and fight until he was satisfied. Xiao Chen used his saber to block Zhang Li's attack, and Xiao Chen's left fist dealt with the palm wind sent by Mu Heng. The figures of the three of them were constantly moving on the spear formation. There were non-stop sounds of saber wind, palm wind, tiger roars, and more. After a while, the three of them had exchanged hundreds of moves. Everywhere they passed, the spear tips would shatter and a vicious wind blew, filling the air with sand. Soon, under the torrential attacks of the two of them, Xiao Chen had already held on for more than 500 moves. However, he was not at a disadvantage. Instead, the more he fought, the more ferocious his aura became. The crowd in the spectator stand could only see a vague figure of the three of them through the yellow that filled the air and hear the sound of the weapons, fist, or legs clashing. It was such a fantastic fight, yet they were separated by a veil of sand. They could only feel an itch in their hearts and lament at how unfortunate it was. This Xiao Chen is really strong. Despite being attacked by two of them, he is not at a disadvantage. The fame of Qingyan Peak's Xiao Chen is truly well-deserved. Zhang Lai and Mu Heng are not bad either. Any regular inferior grade martial saint would not be a match for them. How could they be bad? There is no need to speak for Zhang Lai. Tianyu Peak has already recognized him and his strength lies within the top 10 Tianyu Peak core disciples. As for Mu Heng, I heard from the Baikan Peak's people that he is actually the Peak Master's son. He had been in secluded training in the back mountains, turning his body into a saber and using his physical strength to prove his Tao. Every time his cultivation increased, his strength would increase exponentially. I wonder how much longer Xiao Chen can endure. I do not believe he should be able to do so for much longer, after 500 moves. Indeed, after all, he is 1 against 2. The exhaustion of his essence is twice that of the other two. The more they fight, the more apparent it will become. However, for him to endure so long, his strength is horrifying. While the people in the spear formations were fighting, the spectators kept themselves busy discussing their opinions. After this fight, even if Xiao Chen lost, the rumors about him would collapse. As the saying went, the layman watches the excitement, the experts watch the techniques. The few peak masters on the high platform were completely shocked by Xiao Chen. They were in awe of his strength. His aura lasts in a drawn-out battle and can multitask between saber techniques and fist techniques, harmonizing them in perfect balance. This fellow is terrifying, the Gangyu Peak's peak master sighed. Chu Shangyan, the Jade Maiden Peak's peak master, was also filled with admiration. His physical body is comparable to Mu Chen's and his saber technique can suppress Zhang Lai. His essence seems inexhaustible. I wonder how strong he will be when he becomes a martial saint. Ever since the Bian Peak's peak master, Song Ke, was humiliated earlier, he had been silent. When he saw Xiao Chen's true strength, he thought to himself anxiously, Xiao Chen's potential is too terrifying. If I gave him time to grow, how terrifying would he become? By then, the consequence would be unimaginable. I must find an opportunity to kill this person. When the Baikan Peak's peak master, Mu Feng, saw Xiao Chen fighting, he was full of shock as well. He originally thought, when Mu Heng made his debut, he would definitely be able to take back the position of first place. That seems quite uncertain now. However, that was also fine. If he were able to obtain some motivation from this, causing him to restrain his arrogance, it would be good for him in the future. Lang Tianzheng took the sight of all this in and sighed after a while. Ruyu, you have accepted a good disciple this time. Tianyu Peak has already occupied the first place in the core disciple exam for the past 10 years. Now, it will be handed over to you. Lu Ruyu's graceful face revealed a happy smile. She was definitely the happiest person at seeing Xiao Chen's growth. Martial Uncle Leng, you are too polite. Tianyu Peak is full of talent. Yours is still the peak with the highest number of passing disciples. Haha, well, we will see. Zhang Lai still has not used his saber intent extensively yet. Junior brother Mu's son probably has not revealed his trump card yet, either. The final result of this battle is undecided. Lang Tianzheng laughed gently and ended the topic. Even if Lang Tianzheng lost the first place in this exam, he would not mind it too much. After all, most of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's strength was concentrated there. The strength of the younger generation would continue to grow in the future. He would still be able to suppress the other peaks as before. Bang! Bang! As everyone was discussing, there were two loud sounds coming from the drill grounds. Countless spear tips trembled and flew into the air before shockwaves crushed them into powder. A strong wind died down and the sand settled. The three of them retreated, and their figures slowly appeared before the crowd. Mu Heng's face was pale, and there was some blood at the corner of his mouth. The intense purple light on his body also slowly dimmed. Zhang Lai's clothes were tattered and torn. There were many saber wounds of varying sizes and depths on his body. Blood flowed from them continuously. He looked very miserable. Xiao Chen held his saber in one hand and the flag in the other. Sweat flowed down his face incessantly. There were also some saber wounds on his body, but they were not serious. With his strong physical body, they had already, more or less, recovered. Xiao Chen was dressed in long robes which fluttered in the wind. His black hair danced in the breeze. The snow-white saber blade gave off a cold light. The flag in his hand fluttered loudly with the wind. Xiao Chen's aura was flourishing, his qi and blood were vigorous. He felt incredibly delighted and wished to exchange another 800 moves or so. You are strong. If you can withstand my next move, I will take the initiative to back out, Mu Heng said to Xiao Chen as he gently wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Zhang Lai muttered to himself for a while. Then he took out some golden salve from his spatial ring and spread it on his wounds. He said, "Same for me. If you can withstand my next move, then I will give up on this core disciple exam as well." Shoo! Xiao Chen threw the flag in his hand violently, sticking it firmly into the ground. Then, he said, "Very well. Who is first? Whoever wins obtains the flag from my hands. I'll go first." Zhang Lai said softly, and he started to gather strength slowly. He grasped his saber tightly in his right hand, infusing the saber intent he had comprehended into his aura. A strong boundless wind started blowing behind Zhang Lai. Some of the air currents seemed to have been sliced apart and gave off a zzz sound. Zhang Lai's saber intent merged with the wind as well. With your talent, you should have comprehended the 16th move of the Lingyun saber technique as well. However, my small perfection saber intent has infused into my everlasting startling cloud. Its might is not comparable to what it previously was. I hope you will be able to survive this. After Zhang Lai spoke, columns of clouds appeared on the spear formation. Everyone's vision was blocked, they could not see the scene. Not just that, these clouds confused their five senses and Xiao Chen's spiritual sense. Xiao Chen thought in astonishment, the clouds definitely contained Zhang Lai's saber intent, as well. Indeed, in the next moment, Xiao Chen could feel a killing intent throughout the clouds. When the clouds came in contact with his skin, they started to attack the protective essence covering him, making an endless, zzz, sound. Xiao Chen's right hand covered the hilt of the lunar shadow saber. The qi whirlpool in his dantian spun rapidly, unceasingly strengthening the essence covering him. Within the clouds, Xiao Chen's five senses were useless. When he extended out his spiritual sense, he only felt the boundless clouds. Xiao Chen was like a blind person in these clouds, he could not see anything. With this move, Xiao Chen was temporarily in a disadvantaged position. Xiao Chen closed his eyes, he might as well not use his physical sight to observe his surroundings and simply adapt to the situation as it went along. Zhang Lai, who hid in the clouds, locked his killing intent on Xiao Chen. He could feel each and every one of Xiao Chen's movements. He revealed a faint smile. Regardless of whoever it is, after their five senses are confused, they will not be able to withstand this saber strike of mine. Everlasting startling cloud. The surrounding clouds slowly scattered and gathered towards the saber in Zhang Lai's hand. White spots of light started to dance restlessly on the black saber blade. Boom. When all the clouds disappeared, Zhang Lai's saber absorbed all the saber intent from them. The glow of the saber blade was now incredulously bright. The most important thing was that this saber was already less than a meter away from Xiao Chen, the tip pointed at Xiao Chen. Their saber created a strong wind, causing Xiao Chen's hair to blow back. All this happened in the time it took for a spark to fly. In the eyes of the observers, it was only a few breaths of time. Zhang Lai waved his saber and clouds surrounded the spear formation. The next moment, the clouds disappeared, and he was pointing his saber at Xiao Chen. It was incredibly strange. Within the drill grounds, there were very few who could understand the profoundness of what had happened. The instant the clouds appeared, Zhang Lai had made use of the time Xiao Chen's 5 senses were confused to fly to an area 10 meters before him silently. Before the saber blade touched Xiao Chen, the resplendent saber light turned into a fine thread of saber chi with a su sound and fired at Xiao Chen's forehead. Su. During the crucial moment of life and death, Xiao Chen's tightly shut eyes finally opened. The slender thread of saber chi was faster than the speed of sound. At such a close distance, by the time Xiao Chen opened his eyes, it was already right in front of his eyes. Xiao Chen pushed his feet off the saber top, and his body started spinning. His spinning body gave off a hukai sound as it revolved. It created a terrifying air current. A tiny tornado appeared in the surrounding space. The fine thread chased after Xiao Chen, quickly extending in the air. Everywhere it passed, a crack appeared in the air temporarily. The slender thread of saber chi seemed like it was about to catch Xiao Chen but was unable to do so. Zhang Li's lips curved upwards in an arc, and he swung his right hand, which was holding the saber, upward. The fine thread started to become even thinner slowly. Then, he looked at Xiao Chen and laughed as he said, "It is useless. No matter how fast you run, you will never escape from my everlasting startling cloud infused with the small perfection saber intent." Xiao Chen continued spinning. He was not shaken by Zhang Li's words. The thread-like saber chi eventually turned so fine, it was no longer visible, completely vanishing into the air. Xiao Chen had comprehended the everlasting startling cloud as well. Naturally, he did not think that the everlasting startling cloud had vanished. The explosion in the next instant was the true essence of the everlasting startling cloud. Xiao Chen continued spinning, flying higher and higher. In the blink of an eye, he was more than 100 meters high. The everlasting startling cloud was originally a superior grade Earth-ranked martial technique. Its might was close to that of a heaven-ranked martial technique. This was especially so for the final 3 moves. Furthermore, Zhang Lai had infused all his saber intent into it. Even Xiao Chen did not know how strong this everlasting startling cloud would be. If Xiao Chen wanted to block this move and achieve a complete victory, Xiao Chen had no other option aside from using the Lingyun Saber Technique's 17th move. However, Xiao Chen had not made a breakthrough in the twisting road around peak. He was suddenly struck with inspiration and somewhat comprehended something. He made use of this opportunity and took the risk, acting according to his feelings. If it failed, at the very least, Xiao Chen would be severely injured by the everlasting startling cloud infused with saber intent, wasting half a year of time he could use for cultivating. If it succeeded, he would comprehend the Lingyun Saber Technique's 17th move, twisting road around peak. After that, he would have one more trump card in his hand. The odds of success were 50-50. Xiao Chen did not hesitate to gamble. With his current comprehensions, he had not been able to comprehend the twisting road around peak. Once he comprehended the twisting road around peak, its might would rise to a horrifying level. Right now, this opportunity was before Xiao Chen. If he did not grab this chance, he might not gain an opportunity to comprehend this for another 10 years. Now! Zhang Lai shouted. The fine thread that originally vanished into the air reappeared. It was like a laser made of saber chi as it pierced through the entire spear formation, penetrating everything without stopping or slowing down. Hu. A wall 2,000 meters away from Zhang Lai, outside the drill grounds, was pierced by the saber chi. The entire wall immediately started cracking and collapsed in the next moment. Fortunately, the area covered by the fine thread's attack was just a spot. During the period it vanished, Xiao Chen started to raise his body higher. He was now several hundred meters above the ground. Die. Everlasting startling cloud, explode. Zhang Lai shouted furiously. The laser-like resplendent saber chi scattered and turned into countless lines of light, firing in all directions and causing intense explosions. Boom. 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 The strands discharged out like they were fireworks. It was a very pretty scene. However, in the world, the prettier something was, the more dangerous it was. This was no exception. Good. Zhang Li's saber intent was indeed horrifying. Originally, the everlasting startling cloud was only effective in a horizontal line. Now, it had no blind spots. Furthermore, it was even mightier now. It was infinitely closer to a heaven-ranked martial technique. I guarantee, on my status as Bian Peak's Peak Master, if Yi Chen is not dead, he is at least severely injured. There is no way he dodged this. Song Ke, whose eyes lacked light all the while, shouted excitedly when he saw this scene. It was as though he were afraid no one would know. He was startlingly loud. Lu Ruyu also felt anxious. She did not expect the Lingyun saber technique to be this horrifying. Even with her strength, she would have to spend a lot of effort blocking this move. Can Yi Chen dodge this? Every strand of light carried a horrifying amount of energy. They could easily penetrate the defenses of a martial Grand Master. Furthermore, there were no blind spots, there was no way to dodge this. Since there is no way to dodge, then I will break it. Xiao Chen stopped spinning and shouted, twisting road around peak. Su. Xiao Chen, who was high in the air, pointed the tip of his saber at Zhang Lai and locked on his spiritual sense. His body moved downwards in a diagonal line, flying at Zhang Lai like a meteor. Everywhere Xiao Chen passed, the image of a mountain started to materialize slowly. Starting from the summit to the foot, Xiao Chen's body seemed to be drawing out the mountain in the air. There were very rarely seen plants on the mountain peak. The trees formed forests. There were birds and beasts, flying or walking about. If one looked carefully, there were even countless buildings in the middle of the mountain. One could even faintly see countless human figures in the buildings practicing martial techniques with loud voices. The bigger the mountain, the faster was Xiao Chen's speed. The increase in speed was quite obvious. On the high platform, all the elders and peak masters were shocked. This is the small perfection mysterious phenomenon. There is practically no way to break it. The lights flying at Xiao Chen were all buried in the illusion of his mysterious phenomenon, vanishing without a trace. However, the lines of light fired in other directions exploded. They were like claps of thunder, discharging endlessly as they headed for the clouds. The air seemed to have split in half, like a waterfall splitting. It only came back together after a long time. Unfortunately, that was not where Xiao Chen was. It was useless. Hu Kai. The mountain formed completely. Xiao Chen's speed instantly broke the sound barrier. A sonic boom rang out by Zhang Li's ear. This all happened in an instant. Afterward, Xiao Chen landed about 200 meters behind Zhang Lai. Zhang Lai stretched out his hand and touched his forehead gently. There was a small wound there. To him, it was negligible. I lost. Zhang Lai knew that Xiao Chen had shown mercy. Otherwise, this saber strike could have pierced through his forehead. Although he felt dissatisfied, he still jumped down from the spear tip. Boom. Zhang Lai staggered and fell over. The final saber strike had completely exhausted his spirit, chi, and mind. In the end, he still failed. He could no longer hold on. The Jade Maiden Peak elders quickly rushed over and carried Zhang Lai out, starting treatment on his wounds. It's your turn, Xiao Chen said as he looked at Mu Heng, who was not far away. Mu Heng smiled faintly and jumped down from the spear tip. There is no need. Your final move has a small perfection mysterious phenomenon. I am not able to block it. You have expended too much essence already. I will not take advantage of you. I will defeat you fair and square in the future. Twisting road around peak. So that is what the 17th move of the Lingyun Saber technique is like. No one has managed to execute it for several hundred years. Indeed, Zhang Li's ability to execute the 16th move, Everlasting Startling Cloud, is horrifying already. However, it is nothing in the face of the 17th move. Mu Heng is quite magnanimous, he gave up immediately. He did not take advantage of his opponent's situation. With such a bearing, his future accomplishments will not be few. Senior brother Mu raised a good son. The crowd and the peak masters on the platforms were all expressing their opinions on the earlier fight. There was only one person who remained silent, he had a gloomy expression. Without having to say it, this person was, of course, the Bian Peak's peak master who had used his position to guarantee Xiao Chen's loss. Right after he spoke, Xiao Chen used the twisting road around peak and slapped Song Q's face. It was truly the twisting road around peak. Junior brother Song, it looks like you should be careful about what you say. Haha. The Qianduan Peak's peak master joked. Before Song K lost his arm, he conducted himself in a domineering manner, he was extremely arrogant. He did not have a good relationship with the other peak masters. Now that they saw him making a joke of himself, they could not help but make fun of him. Song K snorted coldly, what ability? Mu Heng gave up. If Mu Heng did not give up, this brat would have lost the right to continue with the exam. When Lu Ruyu heard this, she immediately said mockingly, all the Bian Peak disciples have been eliminated already. What are you still doing here? Aren't you just asking to be mocked? Song K flushed red. He smacked a wooden table violently and said, since when have you controlled my movements? Su. Just as the two of them were arguing, the first elder, Zhang Kai, who was on the tall platform, threw another black dart at the chief examiner. Is there another change to the situation? Everyone stopped their discussions and felt suspicious. On the drill grounds, the chief examiner caught the black dart and opened the note on it. After a while, he looked at the crowd and said, Mu Heng and Zhang Lai, the elders' assembly decided to make an exception and declare that the three of you passed the second stage. We will now stop the exam temporarily and start the arena battles in 3 days. You can disperse now. Furthermore, I believe everyone has also guessed it. This particular exam is different from the past. There are only 10 core disciple spots this time. However, the rewards will be 5 times those of the past. I hope everyone will continue to do your best after you go back. Mu Heng, who was originally prepared to leave, could not help but stop when he heard those words. Thus, he shook his head and said, if I can't get the first place, there is no point in taking the exam. On the spear formation, Xiao Chen held the flag as he jumped down gently and looked at the elders on the high platform. He pondered, what is the purpose of these 3 days? In Xiao Chen's courtyard, the moonlight was shining through the window. Xiao Chen was sitting cross-legged on his bed and circulating the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation. He was slowly recovering his spirit, chi, and mind, which he exhausted during the day. The whirlpool in his dantian was spinning without stopping. Drops of crystal clear fluid slowly fell out. Xiao Chen felt the speed of his Purple Thunder Divine Incantation circulating. He thought to himself, looks like I am going to break through to the 4th layer of the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation. Something major is definitely going to happen after his exam. I should make some preparations. If I have the opportunity to break through to the 4th layer of Purple Thunder Divine Incantation, I should give it a try, in case of a rainy day. Around midnight, a white light flashed silently in the spirit blood jade in front of Xiao Chen's chest. Under the moonlight, Xiao Bai's completely white body quietly appeared. Then, it went through the window and headed out of the courtyard. Xiao Chen opened his eyes and looked in the direction Xiao Bai left. He laughed for a bit and did not bother with it. In the past few days, Xiao Bai would go out almost every night. Initially, Xiao Chen was somewhat worried. However, he discovered that it did not go far. It would steal a bottle of wine from Xiaoyang before going to the back mountains to cultivate. Before the sun rose, it would always return. Since it was so, Xiao Chen relaxed. To the active Xiao Bai, the place it liked the least was the spirit blood jade. Xiao Chen was quite happy to let it roam around safely. Recollecting his thoughts, Xiao Chen continued to circulate the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation. He was making his final preparations to break through to the 4th layer of the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation. Xiao Bai, who was outside the courtyard, turned into a white shadow as it ran out happily. It made its way to Xiao Yang's room. It was very familiar with the way. Xiao Bai dexterously opened the window to Xiao Yang's room without making any sound. When it came out, it was carrying a bottle of wine, elatedly drinking. When Xiao Bao finished the contents of the bottle, there was a trace of redness on its face. Under the moonlight, it looked very beautiful, its intelligent eyes were very charming. Xiao Bai quickly ran to the back mountain and found a place with dense spiritual energies. It sat down in a cross-legged fashion like humans. The dense essence in its body slowly circulated the mysterious 9 heavenly revolution transformation. There was a drizzle, the surrounding spiritual energy fell like rain. Under the moonlight, the drops of spiritual energy had a certain unexplainable grace and beauty. The rain instantly entered Xiao Bai's body. Its white body started to turn transparent. In the lower parts of its body, there was a vague spot of light. It was exceptionally obvious. Xiao Bai leapt around happily and absorbed the spiritual energy drop by drop. As the amount of spiritual energy absorbed increased, the spot of light grew bigger. After a short while, the spot of light. No, it was no longer a spot of light. Instead, it was a small ball of light giving off a warm and gentle glow. The small ball of light repeatedly changed into all sorts of different forms. Finally, it struggled to form the shape of a tiny human. However, it was not able to maintain it for more than a minute. The human figure scattered into countless motes of light before turning back into a light ball. The mysterious 9 heavenly revolution transformation was a highly ranked immortal grade technique for demonic beast cultivation in the immortal world. According to the records in the Compendium of Cultivation, simply the cultivation speed would be faster than Xiao Chen's Purple Thunder Divine Incantation, not to mention the other benefits. If Xiao Chen were here and discovered what Xiao Bai was doing, he would be shocked. This was because Xiao Bai was trying to change its form. The spirit beasts of the Tianwu continent could only change their form when they reach the level of martial monarch. Furthermore, the process was very painful. It was an intensely hair-raising experience, and the failure rate was extremely high. However, once it succeeded, it would be a qualitative change to the spirit beast. Not only would their appearance change, but they would also be no different from humans. Furthermore, their spiritual intelligence would increase drastically. They would be able to learn the human's cultivation techniques and martial techniques. For a spirit beast who could only fight using its physical body, their strength would increase by at least 2 times. The path of changing forms had too low a success rate. Once they failed, they would turn into ash and disappear. Although many spirit beasts yearned for it, few would choose such a path. Furthermore, even if they succeeded in changing forms, they would not be able to assimilate into human society completely. Most would choose to go to the sect of the Fiend race, Myriad Fiend Palace. It was a sect that was passed down by the ancient Fiend race. It was only there that they were able to fit in. The rain made from spiritual energy slowly scattered. Xiao Bai stopped cultivating and looked up at the night sky. There was a melancholic look in its eyes. Under the soft and gentle glow of the moon, Xiao Bai hugged its wine bottle and walked back to Xiao Chen's courtyard unsteadily. 3 days flew by in a flash. The purple thunder divine incantation was already stable at the 3rd layer. As long as Xiao Chen wanted to, he could make a breakthrough to the 4th layer at any time. On this particular night, Xiao Chen was in the courtyard practicing the Lingyun saber technique, consolidating the twisting road around peak he recently comprehended. There was a cool breeze in the courtyard. The leaves flew everywhere, and all sorts of illusions of mountains appeared and disappeared repeatedly. Xiao Chen withdrew his saber and thought carefully about that fight. The path I walk is different from Zhang Lai. I internalize the mysterious phenomenon and focus of the energies within. However, on that day, I was only able to materialize the mysterious phenomenon. I was not able to perfectly merge it in. If I can perfectly merge it into the saber technique, its might should raise by another level. Even if it were a small perfection mysterious phenomenon, it is not without flaws. In front of a true bladesman, it could easily break. So, I have to think of a way to make the mysterious phenomenon merge into my saber.